Let's get a close-up of Gloria's ring.
Where am I looking? Right here.
You fly in a private plane.
Yes, I do.
You're staying right now in one of the fanciest hotels in New York City.
Yes, I am.
You wear very nice clothing. So...
Sermon watched by more than 10 million viewers on television.
The apostles were businessmen. They were rich men, had plenty of money. I'm going to show you that Jesus was a wealthy man, had plenty of money.
One of my chandeliers costs more than most people's house. I got 22 chandeliers in the house.
They're extremely greedy. They don't need mansions. They don't need jets.
God told me to have that plane.
Any religious leader who speaks the word of God, who has more than one suit, while someone has no clothes, is a cop-out.
Yeah, you know, Larry, I just don't see it that way.
For $54 million, I want you to imagine how many people could be fed.
Oh,
how many homeless could have places to sleep.
Fresh,
Growing up, when I was much younger, I went to the Anglican church, and most of the people I knew and the children that I met, my mates in school and other places, were either Catholic or Anglican or Methodist, but really Orthodox Christianity was what I was used to in my earlier growing years. And as I began to grow older, I found that I had this attraction towards the newer churches that I began to see come up. They seemed to be more attractive in the sense that they were not very restrictive in appearances. They did not care too much about what you wore to church, just that you came and that you had the Spirit of God in you or stuff like that. I just felt that they were more focused on the spirituality aspects of Christianity and nothing else. And I found that to be very cool, and it seemed like they were more tush and they had more updated members and had more money and stuff like that going in those churches. And all of a sudden, my interest in Orthodox Christianity began to die down. And I was more interested in these kinds of churches. And it was until relatively recently that I realized what it was. And I realized that these were mega churches, and mega churches were mostly characterized by something called the prosperity gospel.
If you'll stay in faith, there will come a point where God will say, enough is enough. It's payback time.
The Bible says, I know you love the Lord. So you qualify for prosperity.
When I was little, I always heard of things like different churches having different doctrines, and I just thought, well, in the body of Christ, this is what these churches want to focus on preaching on. If there are 10,000 churches in the world and everybody preaches about one particular topic, then there's going to be a large area that will be uncovered for the people of God to really listen to and learn. And so I thought that doctrines were the way that churches diversify the message so that every message of God can be passed down to the people just by attending or listening to messages from different churches and different ministers. But then I began to look closely at what the prosperity gospel and what mega churches were. The prosperity gospel is a gospel that believes that as human beings, we are little gods, we are small gods, and we deserve all the good things of life and every good thing that life has to offer. And just by asking and praying and simply believing, we can get access to everything and every good thing that life has to offer. That as Christians, we deserve all the good things of life. Not just that as Christians we deserve all the good things of life, but as Christians we are entitled to the good things of life.
God's, little g. You are God's because you came from God.
And your DNA and Jesus' DNA are exact. You're exactly like it.
It sounds... As a Christian, one of the characteristics of people who believe in God is abundance, is riches, is the good life. Another major characteristic of the prosperity gospel is the idea of tithing.
Tithing lays the foundation for financial success and abundance.
Tithing is the way for recession or depression to bypass you.
Here, Stephanie from Maryland writes, I sent in my first fruits offering. 2 weeks later, I received, watch this, $2,400.
In prosperity gospel, it is shaped in such a way that you are supposed to tithe to gain financial favors from God. So as a result, it makes that kind of teaching extremely lucrative.
Now remember,
somebody's son is going to be set free from alcohol because of your $1,000 seed.
And I'm going to ask you to sow an exceptional and uncommon seed of $1,000.
To click on that donation button to sow $1,144.
So God is giving you the harvest, and the harvest of the seed you've sown. You can't expect a harvest if you don't sow seed, spiritual, physical, or financial.
In my church, we have what they call documented testimonies. I don't know how many churches do that, but they do that in my church. Documented testimonies often come always every service. So even if there is a testimony that somebody has to give and they give their testimony, there's always a documented testimony. And I noticed a certain format with documented testimonies in my church. Documented testimonies always come with them having a problem, and then the second part will be them giving something to the church. A lot of the time it's financial. I'll give you an example. A woman said that she wanted to have her son gain admission into the university, and she was praying fervently for it. He had already failed to gain admission twice, and this was the third time of them trying, and she had made all efforts, and then she gave her salary to God and ended up praying, and then eventually the son got admitted. And every single documented testimony in my church follows the same pattern, where they have a problem, they gave money to the church or the pastor, and sometimes it's always not the tithe. It's some sort of sacrificial giving that always unlocks supernatural blessing. Kenneth Copeland has a church with thousands of members.
You said that you don't like to fly commercial because you don't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers.
One of the things that shocked me about the prosperity gospel is the wealth and the net worth of the pastors who champion the prosperity gospel. I called Kenneth Copeland, I called Joel Austin, I called Jesse Duplantis and Creflo Dollar, and also Benny Hinn. And each of these pastors have something and a way that they deliver their teachings and their sermons. I'll give you an example. In 2018, Kenneth Copeland bought a jet. After buying that jet, they also went down to say that the work is not done yet. They also need an additional $17 million to upgrade the hangar and also create a new runway for the updated jet that they've bought, because this is not the first jet. He doesn't have just one aircraft. He has multiple. Then there's Creflo Dollar.
Want to believe God for a $65 million plane? You cannot stop me. You cannot stop me from dreaming.
I'm not saying all these pastors are scammers in a way. I'm trying to point out a certain conscious way that they do their gospel and how it benefits them directly. It's essentially difficult for me to see how it benefits the congregation themselves, especially individually. But I see the pattern in which the gospel is preached and the way the churches are run, and I see how it benefits the pastor. Joel Austin has a lot of links to the law of attraction in his own doctrine and his own sermons. There's something they call the New Thought philosophy that became popular in the 19th century, which is that you can use your mind alone to attract things. The law of attraction is basically what I'm talking about. That if you believe stuff carefully and you relax your mind and you live in that reality and you bask in it, you can attract whatever you want using your mind alone. It is a popular philosophy now that we are in the 21st century. Everybody knows you can do that because it works. I'll give you an example of the placebo effect. For those who don't know the placebo effect, which is like if you believe something, you can use anything as a drug. Or let me say, using an example. For example, you're sick and you have, for example, the reason why I have my glasses on now is because my eyes are red. I woke up this morning with eye crust and red eyes all day. Say, for example, I had a problem, maybe one that is internal, it's not tangible, you can't really see the symptoms, maybe a headache. And I go to the hospital and the doctor that I trust gives me this pill and says this pill is new and it has the capacity to cure every pain within 5 minutes. Whatever pain you're feeling, if you take this pill, it is so strong that it can cure your headache in 5 minutes. My belief in that doctor and in what he says about that pill, because he obviously knows more than me, will make me take that pill and my headache will leave within 5 minutes. And it is my belief that causes it, because the pill is a placebo. It is empty. It only has water and small sugar in it, so it does nothing for you health-wise. It's like you have this thing, this philosophy that works, but you look like a witch or a wizard or a guru or a monk. I don't want to look like that. So you go and find yourself in this niche with this update, and you take people you intertwine that with Christianity, and then you take people from that congregation and mix with yours and teach them that stuff. Further evidence to show that is how the pattern is in his book. The title of the book is Your Best Life Now. In that book, he writes, "It is not God's lack of resources or your talents that prevents you from prospering. Your own wrong thinking can keep you from God's best." And the book is filled with messages like that, telling you about the power of words, the power of positive thinking and stuff like that. That's not really biblical. You should deep it. But it has strong roots in that New Thought philosophy I talked about earlier.
I am confident. I am secure. I am talented.
So his entire thing is that he doesn't really preach. He just uses a lot of these self-help and motivational things. And then here comes Benny Hinn.
You're accustomed of giving $10, go to 20. Go up to 70, 80, 100. Raise that amount and watch what God will do, because...
Don't you stop sowing offerings. Well, they won't let us go to church. Well, email it in there, text and give or something. You get that tithe in that church, you get that offering in that church, and then you go home and you do what we're supposed to do.
Like Jesus was known for miracles, and Benny Hinn is also known for miracles. He's known as a spirit healer. He has screeners at his sessions, at his churches. Obviously, you cannot heal everybody, obviously, right? But then there is this family that had this son that was basically a vegetable, Indian family. And there's just the three of them. And they believed strongly in Benny Hinn and his abilities to heal them. They went to his church every day.
We're expecting a miracle.
All these pastors, one thing they have in common is asking for donations that are not tithes. The prosperity gospel is littered with a lot of donations that have nothing to do with tithing, even if they make tithing the number one reason why anybody can make money or have any success in life. I digress. I used to always have this thinking. I used to always have this argument with my father as well. If it's our tithe that can make us whole and give us money, why is that my neighbor who doesn't do all of that and is just a regular Catholic or doesn't even go to church at all does a lot better in business and in life? And that question is always met with excuses and not answers ever.
It didn't happen. I was not even discouraged. I know it's God's plan.
I can stake my life on Pastor Benny Hinn's words. And God spoke to me last night at the Colosseum Center where the crusade was going on, and He said, donate him another $2,000, and which I'm going to do it. I'm going to do that.
But the thing is, the reason why they are rich is not because God filled their account with money from heaven spiritually. It's because you give them money. And nobody is giving you any money back. And nobody is teaching you the principles of wealth. 3 days later, the boy died.
Do you feel in any way that Benny Hinn has let you down?
No.
Did you ever, in some of your worst moments, think that you must have done something wrong in the eyes of God to deserve this?
Yes. I know there's a generational curse. Maybe it originated from me or from my parents, because that curse lasts for 3 or 4 generations.
Who taught you that?
I heard it from Pastor Benny.
It doesn't square with the Bible at all. It's a complete scam.
A lot of the healing that Benny Hinn used to do, there was a time when there was a woman who was lame and she couldn't walk, and she was brought up to the altar with her wheelchair, and she stood up and walked on his command. And then when reporters were following her case, went back to check on her 2 days later, she was back on her wheelchair. She couldn't stand anymore. She didn't know what to do.
I've watched your healing crusades. Am I seeing anything that goes beyond placebo?
I've wondered why sometimes someone comes in and comes out of a wheelchair, and walks around, runs around, and hours later, they're back in that wheelchair again.
There was a story I heard during one of the Plateau riots that happened in the olden days, like in 2005 or so. Somebody said he jumped a fence, and he jumped the fence without really touching the fence. And he doesn't understand how he did that till today. But he did that, and he knows he did that. And there's been several stories of people who have been put under certain types of pressures, and they perform feats that they never thought they were capable of, and that they cannot replicate to this day. And there's a certain condition, there's a certain window where you can perform extraordinary things if the conditions are right and they are set for it. Something I noticed during Benny Hinn's healing sessions is that there was a certain atmosphere that was created. Everybody knows that atmospheres can have heavy impact on performance, puts you in a flow state. That state where you are invincible, everything is working out. So, with focus and the right environment, you can get in a flow state and do anything. You can do the impossible. And what he creates is an environment that puts you in a flow state. The music that is happening, the belief in the crowd, and his voice in the background really edging the crowd on to think that anything is possible. That atmosphere that he creates makes it possible for anybody who wants to do anything in that moment to do it. But it is all for that woman to be able to get up and walk. And once she's able to get up and walk and achieve that, the healing is done. It's a possibility. It's a rush. She ran across the stage, came back, sat on her wheelchair, or went home like that. Like, when the rush is still in you. But once that dies down, everything does, including your legs. And that is the pattern. And that is why, after a few days, the miracle disappears and it doesn't come back and you can't replicate it.
Don't look for the healing, look for the healer.
Now, it has come to Nigeria and it is the exact same thing that happens here.
There's something the Holy Spirit is telling me to do, but I'm struggling. Man of God needs $800,000. God said the ministers, people who came here, must from their heart do it. And he says to me, I should tell you that he's going to unlock financial doors.
Who by the grace of God can give 1 billion naira. And then there'll be some of you who can say, Daddy, I wish I can give 1 billion, but all I can afford is 100 million.
I want to help some of you to move to your next level financially. You're going to give God 1 million naira in 2018. But you're going to say, this is for stupendous wealth.
Never collect money from a senior man of God. You are reducing your blessing. Sow into the senior man to draw virtue for the next level.
Asking you to give so the church can be blessed. We're asking you to give so you can be blessed. Some fellow said, okay, I was worth $150 million. I said, that's an insult. $150 million, that's an insult. $150 million, too small, that can be.
This is not to say that your pastors are fake or they are lying to you. Personally, I believe that they believe in what they are saying. A lot of them have been into this thing for several years, decades even. And because of that, they believe that this is how it works and this is how God does it. They believe it because they are direct beneficiaries of it. And so if they are sharing it with you, it only helps them, it only makes them believe it deeper.
Increase your faith, increase your seed, and store up for the future, so that when these tragedies hit on earth, you will be spared.
When you go to church and you make a jot and you make notes and they tell you the topic for today is how to get so and so in your life, and you write down all the things that he said and you implement those things, do they work for you? Have an honest review. Don't be partial. It's difficult to convince anybody about the opposite of what they already believe in, and it is their responsibility to check themselves. If they want to continue, fine. If they think that you have to have a new belief, fine as well. One other question that I had one time, argued with people in uni, in my lodge in uni then, we were talking about schools and why some pastors have schools that the common man cannot attend and pay for. And there is simply absolutely no biblical reason for those kind of schools with those kind of school fees. The thing is that they wanted to add another business, another stream of income. And since the funds were available, they did state of the art. The school that this church can build, since they can afford to build, if they can afford the jet, they can afford a state-of-the-art university. And if they build a state-of-the-art university, how can they sustain it to make sure that it is self-sustainable and can even turn a profit? It is to make the school fees such that only the high earners can attend. Has nothing to do with membership, has nothing to do with Christianity. It's just whoever has enough money to pay for this will get it so that we can sustain this business. and more jets will keep coming and bigger cars will keep coming, because now they're a clique and there is a competition within that clique, and each of them would have to do what they have to do to be able to compete with the next pastor, and they will take inspiration from the ones in the US or the ones that they have been taking inspiration from in the beginning. What is the truth about why some pastors who have been known to be one of the pillars of a huge church in Nigeria would just leave the church? It's money. Would Jesus have a fight with one of his disciples over money and leave? Would that happen? And time again, we keep seeing the humanity of these people show face beyond even those who don't even go to church.
I don't know what you feel about the prosperity gospel, the health, wealth, and prosperity gospel, but I'll tell you what I feel about it. Hatred. It is not the gospel. And it's being exported from this country to Africa and Asia, selling a bill of goods to the poorest of the poor. Believe this message: your pigs won't die, your wife won't have miscarriages, and you have rings on your fingers and coats on your back. That's coming out of America. The people that ought to be giving our money and our time.
We can see greed, we can see ego, we can see envy, we can see all the 7 deadly sins amongst them. We can see pastors who humanize, who have been called out, whose evidence are all over social media, but yet. See you next week.